Hey, Lonnie.
Oops. Hello. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom, everybody. Let's
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Make sure you turn your cameras on so I can see you.
He said, turn your camera.
Yeah, you're on. You're right there.
Unless you
thank
don't, unless you don't want me to see what color your hair really is.
I'll do it for 1
I see
second.
some people.
Why? You can see
Is that
mine.
all right?
That's all you need. I'll see you later, Joey.
Thank you.
Okay.
Glad to see you.
Good to see everyone. In just a moment, we're going to just kind of catch up with each other and say hi, but we're still letting people in.
Right.
So I see we've got about 40 people so far. We'll keep going. It's great to see all of you. Look at everyone. Wow.
Terrific.
Yeah. Hi, Maxine.
Hi,
Look at you.
Steve.
How you doing?
I'm fine. How about you?
Good. Actually, to be honest, I have to say this very slowly because I can't say it quickly. I got my second shingles shot yesterday.
Oh,
And
Good.
I am not feeling great. I feel like I have the flu, even though I know I don't.
you'll feel better. It just takes a day.
Yeah. Yeah, my
Well,
arm
socially
is,
Yeah, very sore.
yeah, my arm really hurts and it's
Yeah.
red and
Oh,
The
my.
second one is a doozy.
yeah, I definitely feel it. But everyone tells me shingles is worse than the shot. So
By far.
Oh, definitely.
By far.
I'm sure I did the right thing. I just do not feel great.
Where did you go to get it?
I actually went to my
Why is
doctor's
our
house.
picture not on there?
I don't want my picture on there.
I want my picture. How do I do it?
Okay, mute your mic.
You're not RNA, and then it won't come
Anyway,
out.
Why not?
Dick, mute your mic. There we go. Someone asked me how I did it. I ordered it from the pharmacy. They sent it to my house. I drove over to my doctor's house and he gave me the shot. So that's how I did it.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's good to be senior rabbi.
I guess people do take care of people. I will say doctors take really good care of their rabbis because no doctor wants to be responsible for the rabbi dying on his watch.
Absolutely.
I called Apple Pen for delivery. They don't deliver to Studio City.
They don't? Tell them you're Rabbi Leader. See what happens.
Apple Pen delivers? Can they send to Phoenix?
Apple. I just saw Nate Nals is back in business, so that made my day.
And my dear friend Peter Hoffenberg, who grew up at camp in Temple, wants me to send him a sandwich from Nate Nals to Hawaii, where he lives.
I wouldn't eat it after it gets there.
Oh.
Anyway, all right, let's see. It looks like it's kind of leveled off now. I think most people are in who plan on being in. So let me begin. There are 51 of us here right now. I want to say hi to everyone. I just want to scroll through the pages now so I can just see everybody and see your beautiful faces, and we're gonna get started. Okay.
Okay.
I know who that was.
We're still
Barbara.
okay. So let's do this. We've got Don Levy, who's here moderating this for us, and Jay, and they'll be able to mute and unmute. So let's just start with, okay. So if you need to talk, make sure you mute yourself. If you need to talk to someone other than the group here, make sure you mute yourself. And we're going to jump in and I'm just going to start teaching. If you have a Bible at home, it would be a good idea to get it and just have it on your desk. That will be a good idea. I'm not going to, go verse by verse, but if you have a question or you want to see where what I'm talking about is in the Torah, it'd be a good idea to have it. I see Claudia just got hers. Good job, Claudia. Roy, good work. Okay. Whoop. Okay, everybody. Wow, everybody cleaned up pretty well for this thing. I don't see anybody in their pajamas or anything. Wow. I hope you all feel honored I shaved and put on a collared shirt for you today, but I'm still wearing my sweatpants. Okay, all right. So let's jump in. I know I say this every time we study together. It's a very, very interesting set of Torah portions. This week is a double Torah portion. The reason for that is that the Torah has 54 portions. It's divided into 54 sections. Obviously, there are only 52 weeks in the year. And then certain weeks, when it's a holiday, for example, it changes the Torah portion. And so in order to read the entire Torah portion within a year's time, we double up certain Torah portions. And so this is one of those weeks. And the two Torah portions are called Behar and Bechukotai. Behar meaning on the mountain, and Bechukotai meaning my laws, my ordinances. So those are the two Torah portions. They begin in Leviticus chapter 25. So if you want to kind of just know generally where we are, and again, I'm not going to focus on the text very much because it's too difficult in this format. But if you want to know where we are, Leviticus chapter 25, starting at verse 1. Okay. So the first of these two Torah portions focuses almost exclusively on two things, and these two things are very closely related to each other. The first is something in Hebrew called Shemitah, which means the sabbatical year. Now we know that sabbatical means seventh. It comes from Shabbat, which means to cease, to withdraw, but we also know that it's related to the seventh day. So the sabbatical year. So just like every week in the Torah and in Jewish life, every week has a Sabbath. The seventh day is the Shabbat. This is also true for years. What I mean by that is we also have a 7-year cycle. And remember, at the time the Torah was written, Jews were primarily a shepherding and agricultural agrarian society. And so we learn today about this thing called the sabbatical year, where every 7th year, anyone who owned a field was not allowed to work the land during that 7th year. The land was given a year to rest. You could eat whatever happened to grow in your fields that year without having been planted, but you weren't allowed to till the soil and plant a new crop during that 7th year. Just as an aside, Orthodox kibbutzim in Israel had a very tricky problem because their existence depended upon agriculture. And the way they got around it is they leased the land for $1 to their Arab neighbors or to Gentiles, and then, went ahead and planted it. But let's keep in mind that scholars don't believe any of what we're about to discuss was taken completely and totally literally by our ancestors, but there was this idea that every 7th year you let your land lie fallow and you let the land rest. Now we know today that that's just plain good ecology, that's good for the earth. We also have a whole nother set of things. Not just land was allowed to rest, but for example, slaves were set free in the 7th year. Debts, slaves, all these things, debt was set aside for you. You had a 1-year suspension of payment, for example, of debt. So in a sense, every 7th year, and this is going to, I think, resonate for those of us, which means all of us, dealing with COVID-19 right now. And we all feel like there's been this massive reset, a massive reset in our lives, that the entire world has hit 2 buttons at the same time, pause button and the reset button. You know, how do you reset your computer? You literally turn the whole thing off and then you start it again, right? And the Torah, this week's Torah portion, the first of the two, is all about these massive, nationwide, society-wide resets where things were just plain turned off for a year and then restarted because it was good for everyone. Now, it wasn't the result of a terrible disease, but it made me think quite a bit about how this pause and reset, while for a terrible reason, nevertheless probably does contain within it many of the benefits of our ancestors' reset. So I'd like to spend just a minute now talking about this whole number 7, and then I'm going to open it up to you because I want to hear what positive aspects have resulted from this reset for you. I have many that I've thought about, but I'm interested in you. But let's talk about this number 7 because in the Torah and in life, it's a very natural rhythm to life, and particularly the Jewish calendar. So we know we've got the 7-day week, and the 7th day is Shabbat, in which we also cease to create. And I'm going to talk a lot more about what we create when we cease to create. I know that sounds paradoxical, but there are many things that are created when we cease to create, and we're going to get back to that. But in addition to Shabbat, Passover is a 7-day festival. Sukkot is a 7-day festival. A Jewish wedding concludes with something called the Sheva Brachot, 7 blessings. And in traditional Jewish families, the wedding is celebrated for 7 days. And of course, there's Shiva, the Hebrew word for 7. And we know that there's a 7-day prescribed mourning period when someone we love dies. So our ancestors seemed very in tune with this natural rhythm of life, which seems to revolve around the number 7. Okay. Now, this gets expanded from the 7th year to the next level of reset, which was much larger in terms of order of magnitude, which is called the Jubilee year, the Yovel in Hebrew. The Jubilee year was every 50th year. In other words, 7 times 7. And after the 49th year, there was a much larger both pause and reset called the Jubilee year. And in this year, this was kind of, I don't know how to put it, kind of a democratic socialist idea, because this was the year that all debts were forgiven, slaves were set free, and most interestingly, of all for me, anyone who had lost their land, their inheritance, their land that was their family land, because they were impoverished and had to sell it to someone else, all of the land reverts back to its original owner. So this was a colossal redistribution of wealth during the time of the Torah, so that no one could stay very, very rich or very, very poor for very, very long. The idea being that this would prevent a permanent underclass. Now, scholars don't believe that the ancient Israelites actually implemented this, but we do know it's in the Torah, and we do know that behind it is an important idea, which is that no family should be allowed to languish in multi-generational poverty. Because remember, back then, 50 years was 2.5 generations. People died in their 20s and 30s for the most part. So there was this massive reset called the Jubilee year. Now, let me just see if there are any questions about that. I'm going to scroll through, or maybe if you have a question, go to the chat feature. Does everyone see chat at the bottom? And you can click on that and type your question or your comment. And then, or if you want to, you can raise your hand and we'll unmute you. I just want to be sure that all of this is clear so far, or to see if anybody has questions. I wish we were all in one room. That would be easier, but you're such a good group today. No questions? Can't believe it. Okay. Must be because the teacher's being so crystal clear. Sue. Okay, wait, unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Okay, my question is, with the 7-year letting the land lay fallow, did they stagger it? Did everybody get to choose their 7 years, or was it countrywide?
No, it was nationwide, as was the Jubilee year.
Then how did they eat?
Well, so if you look in the Torah portion, that question, God deals with that question by saying, I promise you that the year before the Shemitah year, you'll have an overabundance of crops. You'll have twice as much as you need. And you'll still be eating it when you harvest the 8th year's crop. So it's sort of like this idea of a double portion of manna on Friday, so the Israelites didn't have to go out and collect it on Shabbat. So according to the Torah, and we're in the realm of myth here, I'm going to get into the, I think, symbolic meaning behind all of this in just a couple minutes. But on the face of it, Sukasa, it just is enough would be provided in year 6 to get through year 7, right? Like the amount of toilet paper we have in the garage on the shelves. So, we know we're good.
Question, how do I get it in?
Oh, you can ask.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Jeff, I see your hand up. You want to ask something? Go ahead. Unmute though, Jeff. Jeff, you have to unmute. Go ahead.
There we go. In reference to your greater question, which was the meaning of Shabbat, the meaning of 7 days, what I can do is think in terms of what does Shabbat mean for all of us?
Right.
It means familial involvement. It means rest. It means personal attachments are increased.
Yes.
And we need to look at the COVID-19 quarantine period as Shabbat every day, giving you that opportunity to be closer, to be more open, to be more learned in our loving relationships.
I would equate it even more to the Jubilee year, to the Yovel year, which was an entire year in its length. Because, by the way, I think we're in for an entire year of this, personally.
At least.
Yes. And so, Jeff, that's a good comment, and it leads me to the deeper issue that I want to talk about in terms of this idea of Shabbat, of the 7th, of a sabbatical year and a Jubilee year, which is this very deep religious idea of holiness. We like to say that God is everywhere and every moment is a holy moment and everything is a blessing, but that's not really the way religious life is constructed. The mundane and the ordinary, the opposite by the word, the opposite of sacred is mundane. The word holy in Hebrew, kedusha, means removed or apart from, separate from, set aside. So there's this idea, even embedded in the Hebrew, but definitely embedded in the soul, that there is a separation between the profane and the sacred. There is a separation between the mundane and the holy. That each requires a boundary in order to exist. So you could not, for example, have Shabbat if there was no mundane 6 days a week in contradistinction to Shabbat. Now, this means two things. It means the mundane has limits. It also means that the holy has limits. that even something that is transcendent, if you think about the word transcendent, it implies that it's without limit. But the Jewish concept of transcendence is that it actually has limits. It is because it has to be separate from the mundane. And separate means there's a line, there's a border, there's a fence. So this is the first sort of deeper spiritual point that I want to make, which is if you expect to achieve any degree of holiness, you have to have limits and boundaries on the mundane. You have to contain everything that is not holy. You have to separate the 6 days of the week from the seventh. And because holiness can't really exist unless it is, as the Hebrew implies, removed, separate, and apart, right? Now, the word Shabbat actually means to cease or suspend, to hit the pause button, or to do a reset. So now I want to talk a little bit about the idea of what in Latin, and I've spoken about this in class before, what in Latin is called via negationis, by way of the negative. There's this theological idea that you can only understand what God is by defining what God is not. That if you can figure out what God is not, it will leave behind an understanding of what God is. The simplest way to understand this, and I know some of you have heard me say this before, the simplest way to understand this is a sculpture. A sculpture begins as a block of marble, and the beauty within it is revealed by what's removed, not by what's added. It is beauty that is created by taking away, by removing, by ceasing to create. And this is the entire idea behind Shabbat. Shabbat has very few positive commandments. Positive commandments are thou shalt commandments. Very few. Yes, you're supposed to light candles. Yes, you're supposed to do Kiddush. Yes, you're supposed to do motzi. Yes, you're supposed to do certain prayers. There are some thou shalts on Shabbat. However, there are many, many, many more thou shalt nots. All of these things you are not allowed to do on Shabbat. 39 different categories of work are forbidden on Shabbat. We are forbidden to impose our will on creation on Shabbat. Shabbat, the beauty of Shabbat is created by what we stop doing. Now, without at all trying to justify the very, very profound and horrible effect that this virus is having and will have for a generation on our society. Nevertheless, there is another side to it, which is what is the beauty that has emerged as a result of ceasing so much activity. And I'm interested in people's thoughts about that. So if you're willing to share sort of what is the upside of the downside, what beautiful things have revealed themselves in your life as a result of the cessation of so much of our former lives. And if you raise your hand, I'll give you a call. Nadine, I see Nadine. So unmute Nadine and let's hear from you.
The sound of birds in the morning.
Good morning. Go ahead.
Oh, I said the sound of birds in the morning.
Oh, the sound of birds in the morning. Yes. And the fact that you're taking the time to step outside and listen.
Yeah.
Right?
They're like, I feel like I'm 5 years old again.
Yeah.
Discovering the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Margie, go ahead. Unmute. You got to, there you go.
Yeah, I got it. Neighborhoods, the dinner hour, families biking together that you never saw before this, all of that.
Yeah. 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 I'm seeing parents with their children like it I have never seen before. Yeah. Who else had their hand up? David, go ahead.
Instead of getting up
early and going to my office or rushing to a court hearing at 8:30. After breakfast, I have been reading the Torah, the same Torah that we read for Torah study. And last week, I actually finished the complete Torah that I started about 2 or 3 years ago. And now I'm starting the other one. Actually, a number of years ago, I bought the Art Scroll Torah, which was Orthodox, just because that was the only one that was the only one that was available. The temple didn't sell them, and I got them from a store on Pico. I finished that, and then I didn't have a formal Simchat Torah, but I started with our book.
That's the URJ one. That's great. So you've studied in a way you were never able to study before.
That's correct. I made an effort to do it, and it was very enjoyable and meaningful.
Anyone else want to share? Lynn, go ahead. Lynn, Rabbi Lynn.
Hello, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
That the very few people that I encounter when I'm out walking or once a week when I'm driving, all of a sudden people seem courteous and kind. Neighbors who've never said hello to me now are asking, is everything okay?
Yeah. Go ahead, Risa.
The whole beach has awakened as a new location and everybody is marveling at it. Yeah. We saw the red tide and then we saw the luminosity and now you can see the algae all along the edge. And today there were thousands of clamshells that you never, ever, ever see. Absolutely a new world on the beach. And everybody says hello when they pass you.
Yeah. Now just think about this idea of allowing the land to rest every 7th year, which is essentially what the beach is doing now.
Yes.
And the beauty that emerges. The wisdom of the Torah is pretty extraordinary. Carly, go ahead.
I think just slowing down overall. I think since I've had kids, you're just go, go, go all the time, and with work, and you realize you don't need to be doing all the stuff you're doing all the time. I'm always in my car, I'm always running here and there, and just being home with my kids and just enjoying quiet time has been unbelievable. And I think if this hadn't happened, I don't know if I would have been, forced to do it, or even, I didn't know I wanted it, I guess.
Yes.
It's really nice.
That's so interesting. I know when our kids were young, Betsy said to me that she lived like an upscale homeless person because she felt like she lived in her car.
Yeah.
She ate in the car. She went grocery shopping but couldn't get home in time, so she had a cooler in the back and put the groceries in the back, and she did her calls from the car, and she felt homeless. She felt like she lived in her car.
Yeah.
And this put an end to it. Yeah. I'm gonna tie a ribbon on this in a moment. But let's allow a few more people. Jeff, I see your hand up. Go ahead. And then Merle, you'll be next.
You use the word holiness, but I would like to suggest that this period, particularly or even the Shabbat, is not an opportunity for holiness, but one of gaining in righteousness, requiring the actions of loving kindness, the expressions that we've all just mentioned of sharing and giving to those loved ones and others, so that it really requires action, as Judaism does, to gain in righteousness.
Yeah.
Holiness is a nebulous term, at least for me.
Yeah.
But acts of righteousness and loving kindness, these are real. And we're given an opportunity to practice this daily.
Yeah, I think the larger point is that even those actions, paradoxically, are the result of inaction. That certain things just have to stop in order for other things to emerge. And that, I think, is the deepest idea behind this rhythm of 7. that our ancestors felt it. They felt they needed it. They felt the land needed it. They felt society needed it. That if there wasn't some separation between the mundane and the holy would be unachievable. Because we all know we could work 7 days a week. We all know we could work for 50 years. We all know we're capable of that. And in fact, some people are even proud of it. You know, when I used to be able to talk in front of large audiences, and I would be teaching about Shabbat, I would first start by asking all the alcoholics in the room to raise their hand, and no one would raise their hand. And then I asked all the gambling addicts in the room to raise their hand, and no one raised their hand. And then I asked all the sex addicts in the room, and no one would raise their hand. And then I asked everyone addicted to weed or pills or, you know, opioids to raise their hand. And no one raised their hand. But then I would ask all the workaholics in the room to raise their hand. And a lot of people raised their hand, and they didn't raise their hand with any sense of embarrassment. Quite to the contrary, they raised their hand in a kind of martyr-like glee. And if you think about that workaholism is still thought of in many ways as an acceptable ism. It may be the last acceptable ism in American culture, certainly in Jewish culture. And the Torah here is warning us that if you don't have some kind of a line between the mundane, you'll never experience anything transcendent or sacred. And I think that's exactly right. I just want to read a comment. Elise?
Oh, so the thing I'm doing, I work from home and I'm pretty busy. But a few years ago when we had a drought, I planted cactus in my front yard. And my COVID resolution is to go outside and walk in that garden. And the cactus flowers are blooming in so many colors, and it gives me great pleasure to just do that.
Yes. And you know, it gives some meaning and purpose if you think about just that idea of Shabbat, for example. It gives, when you cease and you create this holy space, it gives some purpose to the other 6 days. And it all makes better sense, I guess is the way I would put it. So I think I want to move on to the next point, unless I've got 3 pages here. So let me see if anyone else has their hand up. Talia, go ahead, unmute yourself and go ahead.
Hi, Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom, Talia.
I have found that often in this sheltering in place that less is more in terms of sharing my opinions with those that I'm sheltering in place with and how I say it. So I have a 14-year-old daughter, and her dad and I have been divorced over 8 years now, but I had invited him in the beginning of this to shelter in place in our guest house that is empty. And because it was short-term rental and now that's no more. So it made sense. And so he was all excited so he could spend time with her. And there's often times where I have said things that I shouldn't have. I had certain things. So now I'm just finding the beauty of not talking and not expressing everything that I'm thinking, and how that translates even into these Zoom meetings, and how it's transformative. And I've learned a lot. And that's what I've gotten from, the biggest thing I've gotten from this.
Well, okay, first of all, if Jews had saints, you would be among them, because I don't know too many women who would let their ex-husband move into the guest house in the backyard. So that's the first thing. That's amazing. But let me make a very special point, I think, given what you just said. Most of us know that in the Torah, one of the rules, one of the thou shalt nots, of which there are very few, one of the rules, one of the things you're not allowed to do, I'm sorry, there are many, right? There are very few thou shalts. One of the many thou shalt nots is you're not allowed to kindle a fire on Shabbat. Can't start a fire because obviously that was a lot of work for our ancestors. Now, Abraham Joshua Heschel, in his beautiful book called The Sabbath, which I recommend to you if you haven't read it, it's an extraordinary book, Sabbath by Abraham Joshua Heschel. It's a beautiful treatise on the Shabbat. Heschel, Heschel. And in that book, Heschel talks about the holiness of time and the importance of time over the material. Now, he says that the Torah obviously forbids us to kindle a fire on Shabbat. And then he goes on to say that he extends that to include not kindling a fire between ourselves and our loved ones on Shabbat. And if we're going to think of this quarantine of COVID-19, of this entire thing as an entire year-long Shabbat, more like a Jubilee year than a sabbatical year, then we can't be lighting fires, right? Particularly with the people that we're hunkered down with. And I know in my family, we've all lost our temper in this house, and we've all apologized and pulled ourselves back together and reminded ourselves that this is a kind of Shabbat and nothing good is going to emerge if we keep starting fires. And so again, I think it's directly related to what we're talking about in the Torah this week. I think the Torah is giving us a really good spiritual understanding of how to view this period of time that we're in right now, and how to understand what kind of beauty might come from it. And I want to be clear, in no way do I think it's worth the price we're paying. But that doesn't mean it's worthless, right? So very good. Any other? Yeah, Robert, go ahead. Robert and then Joy. Unmute.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Yeah.
I think like everyone, I like the fact that nature is starting to come our way more. I saw a couple of dozen seagulls off the beach, or excuse me, pelicans off the beach. You never see that. Cleaner skies. This is all great stuff. But as I shared with you, I see this time as more like Yom Kippur, because I feel like this has really gotten me in touch with my own mortality, and it has me asking, how did the world get to this place? How did I get to my specific circumstances during the pandemic? What resources did I create? What resources didn't I have? So it's a very deep reflection for me. And Judaism is doing really well in this, in terms of looking at values and things.
I agree. And I think that this week's Torah portion, this kind of understanding of separation in order for holiness to be created. You know, I don't know what historians are going to write about us 100 years from now, but I really do believe that the end result is going to be a net gain. I really do. I cannot tell you what it will be, but when the world, someone sent me a note, I think it was Nan Goodman. You can all read it. It's an overwhelming thought that not just us, but the whole world is unified, albeit under an unfortunate situation. This pandemic is the great leveler. We're all in the same boat. Our destiny is literally in each other's hands. And that's really true. So Joy, I know you're next, but I just want to say that I obviously am a person of faith, and I really deeply believe, in ways we cannot yet understand, the end result of this entire mess is going to make life better and more beautiful. And that is not to dismiss the terrible, terrible suffering that we're currently enduring. Okay, Joy, your turn. Go ahead and unmute.
Did I do it? Okay.
Yeah, you did. Go ahead.
Thank you. What the gentleman just said before, I was thinking about, first we're talking about fire, then I thought of oxygen, and then I thought about how clear our air has been. It's our planet, but it's human behavior that has really quieted down. And just look at the sky and we're breathing. And I'm glad you brought up thinking of the positive, because we've all brought up a lot, but it's very hard to think of something positive because this seems so cruel.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you.
Yep. Yep. We've all been enslaved in many ways, and you know, that 7th year, slaves were set free. So let's hope that we really make something of this. I've often said, if you're going to go through hell, don't come out empty-handed. And I think our mission here is not to come out empty-handed. And hopefully we won't. I hope we make some permanent changes in our lives. It's very easy to default to our former selves, but I feel like this one might actually be a true and honest reset. I certainly hope so. Okay, if there are no other comments on this point, Talia, do you have one? You look like you're.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to thank you and all of the other clergy that are hanging back. I know that there's people that can't afford to go or have family that has property in other places and they're taking off on their yachts or they're, you know, going to family houses on islands somewhere and you know, escaping the communal strife or sadness. So thank you for being here to guide us.
I'm a first responder. Don't you worry. I come running with the Torah in my hands. I'm a first responder. It's all right. Susan, go ahead. Susan Ehrlich. That little microphone, lower left. And just click on that to remove. There you go.
I see a lot of positives. I mean, I felt before this, they're just like, stop the world. I want to get off. Because there was so much tension. There's so much anger. And, you know, politics had a lot to do with it. But I constantly heard screaming and yelling and that kind of rancor. My husband came home upset every night with the traffic, and that's gone. He's at home. We're together. We do things together, and you know, and more than we ever have before. There's quiet. I have time to read, and the Jewish community has really responded incredibly. You here with Torah study, Talmud Tales with Rabbi Nickerson, Torah Study with Rabbi Nanas. American Jewish Community has all sorts of classes online. I'm now with the Apocrypha. Israel Bonds has speakers, APAC has speakers, and I'm getting more in than ever before because I used to have to drive to these places.
That's right.
And
that's right.
Communicating now with cousins that I've never met before because we're having discussions across the country. And Zoom has been incredible. And I'm hoping that that's going to stay. And I'm hoping that there are going to be these new ways to connect. Not true, you're not hugging, but okay, you know, that's okay. We're learning, and the calming down period has been very beneficial. Now, of course, I'm in a privileged place.
Yes, yes.
But it's, we've all society has come out of pandemics before, and I think we're going to appreciate people who are helping us through this. The grocery clerks, the drivers, besides the medical staff, and it's a breathing time.
Yeah, I think the wisdom of this massive global reset, it's reflected in the Torah, and they were right. They were right. It's needed. It's needed. And it's not without consequence, by the way. You know, it does have consequences, and they're not all positive, but it's necessary. You know, it is, I don't want to dismiss the negative, as I've said many times, but it is not only negative. And I agree with you. You know, I had to be at a meeting, face masks and socially distanced, at a meeting the other day, and I pulled out of I drove down the street and Sunset was closed for road work, and I was going to be late to the meeting. I asked the guy holding the stop sign, I said, where does Sunset open up again? He said, oh, I don't know. I'm DWP and they're LA County and I have no idea. And I was so mad. And I realized I lived this way every day before all of this. I was at war every day and running late all the time and always upset. You guys know I roll into Torah study at 12:20 or 12:30 because I'm late. So yeah, it's the reset. There's a lot to be said for it. Joy, go ahead.
I'd like to ask you something, Rabbi, and maybe others have thought of this. I find when I'm talking to my teenage grandchildren now, I find myself reminiscing. They seem to like to hear it. They didn't bring it up, but I tell them about a grandmother who remembers a gas light in Chicago, and they love to hear it. I won't go on with that. I'm just asking you, do you feel as though a curtain or something has been lowered between us as far as they never will know how we grew up and what we know now as our grown children, if they're 50, 60, 40, whatever they are. Do you know what I'm trying to say? This is a new beginning.
Look, I remember my parents and grandparents talking about the Depression. It marked their generation, particularly my grandparents. It marked their generation forever, and not all of it was positive. And I think we're kidding ourselves to pretend that this is only good. It's not. I think this is really, really tough on millennials. This is really tough on anyone who wants to hug their grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
This is not all good. My point is, neither is it all bad.
Mm-hmm.
And that's as far as I'm willing to go, because if you go any further, then you're into trying to justify all of this death and misery, and I'm not prepared to do that. I'm prepared to make something of it. I'm not prepared to justify it. Let's see, Jeff and then Merle. Unmute, Jeff. Got to unmute.
The comment that Joy just made is significant, I think, in this way. If you look at the 68 people in this Zoom discussion group, that represents probably 3,500 years of life experience. And the ability to take the time to share the value and information and life experience that has been good, as well as bad possibly, is so vitally important to be able to transmit our history, direction, and ability to be the ethical people that we are just from the lessons of our life. So that sharing of life experience, look at that, 3,500 years of human life experience in this group alone. Is inestimable value. The good, the bad, and the ugly.
And by the way, that's how I see Torah. It's the distillate of an entire people's wisdom and life experience.
The other side of your discussion earlier, which is Shabbat and the separation of the profane, is the other way around if you look at Havdalah. We're lighting candles and restoring the world and the profane work that we do in a joyous way, looking forward to that, sniffing the sweet spices of life.
And we're actually thanking God, Hamavdil ben Kodesh L'chol, the one who separates the sacred from the profane. So exactly right. Merle, your turn. Go ahead.
First of all, I'm not rushing like I did. Whatever, I'm not doing anything different than what I did. I'm just doing it differently. But not because everything is on Zoom besides school and dance and karate for the granddaughters. I don't have to take them places when Sharon would need help with them. But I'm finding that we're carrying on phone conversations and texting in a much different tone of voice than we did when I picked them up from school and they'd be in the car yelling everything about school. And Gabby's 9 years old, and we had this conversation the other day about my mother's yard site this weekend and next weekend. And I never knew that she knew the things that she knows about mother, so those things, I'm finding that as tired as the girls are of being home and they're getting on each other's nerves and of course Sharon's nerves, they're taking in a lot more.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big piece of what's going on around us.
Yeah. It's kind of like the birds in the morning.
Yeah,
right?
Same idea.
It is. It is. Okay, let me just see quickly. I think we're good. I want to just move on, if we can, to, oh, sorry, Dana, is your hand up there? Go ahead. Go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Just want to say hi. Appreciate everybody being here. And I'm in my backyard right now, setting up for a bat mitzvah for tomorrow. 4 guests in person, don't worry. And everybody else will be on Zoom, including Rabbi Leder. And
That's right.
we're definitely making lemonade out of lemons. Super excited for tomorrow and making this little patio area look really pretty. And the reason it's outside is because we're pretending we're at Hilltop Camp where we were originally scheduled. So
yeah, yeah.
Just trying to be resilient and celebratory even in times like this. So
that's right.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
That's great. Mazel tov to you and to Lindsay. It's going to be great tomorrow.
Here she is.
There you are.
Okay.
There's my bat mitzvah girl. You ready for tomorrow?
Oh, here, she's taking my earbud. Hold on. Okay, here she is.
Hi, Lindsay. Are you ready for tomorrow?
Yes.
Are you nervous?
I mean, I won't really be seeing anyone, so there'll be a little bit less pressure, but I'm excited.
Good. I'm scared to death myself, but we'll get through it. Congratulations, Mazel tov. Okay. We've only got a couple minutes left, so I want to just make you aware of a couple of things. On Thursday night, this coming Thursday, is Erev Shavuot. And it's customary on Shavuot to study all night long. It's called a Tikkun Leil Shavuot. An all-night, you pull an all-nighter and study Torah on Shavuot. So each of the clergy are taking half-hour blocks. I think we're starting at like 7 o'clock, and then we're each taking half hours and ending at 10:30. You're going to get an email about it. So please, if you want to do some more study with us coming up very soon, and you'll get to hear anyone you want, look for that email, mark your calendar for next Thursday evening, and we're going to have a kind of marathon study session. We're each doing half an hour. I'm going to be doing a half an hour on the story of creation in the Torah and how it relates to the COVID-19 virus. And we'll probably talk a little bit about Shabbat as well, because of course that's in the story of creation. Shabbat is coming. So, I'm sorry, it's in 2 weeks on the 28th. That's right. Don Levy's right. I said the 18th. I don't know where I got that. 28th. Yes. On the 28th. I have quarantine brain apparently. And I hope you'll join us for Shabbat services every Friday at 6 and every Saturday at 10. Keep looking at our daily emails because they will give you the information of what we're doing online that day, and everything is archived. So if you can't do it live, you can always go back to the temple's website and see everything. Everything is recorded and archived on the temple website. And most of all, I hope we'll all find the ability to, rather than only get down about what we're going through, to find a way to embrace this idea that by removing so much from our lives, we are simultaneously enabling something beautiful to emerge. And if we can focus on the beauty of what is emerging, then this will have meaning and purpose beyond the suffering. And that's my hope. That's my prayer. That's my Shabbat wish for all of you. Okay. And I want to wish you all a Shabbat Shalom. If anybody wants to know more or talk more about any of these ideas, just email me and we can continue by email. I wish everyone a beautiful Shabbos. Okay. So let's just wave and wish each other
Thank you.
Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. So good to see you all.
Shabbat Shalom.
I miss you all.
What is all of
Talia, I'll see you on Wednesday. And Miriam, see you Wednesday.
Yes.
And Sukasa?
Is Maxine still on here? Susan, Maxine said she's been playing Mahjong Online.
Yes, I did too. It's
You are?
called Real Mahjong.
I am also, but you can play with friends. Have you been?
Yes, I have been. So if you want to, do you have a name?
I think my name is just my name, but I'll check.
You could get, yes, because you have a different name. There were no Susans or Susie or anything, or Sue. But you could come, I've been doing it and enjoying it. My name is Blubber Babe.
Oh, wait, B-L?
Blubber, like fat.
Okay.
Babe.
B-A-B-E?
Yeah.
Okay, I will find you.
Okay, that would be fun.
It'd be so fun, so fun. Because I've been playing against the computer.
I have too, and the computer often wins.
The computer what?
Often wins.
So, I
computer is smart.
What website do you go to for the computer for Mahjong? I'd love to know.
Oh, it's called Real Mahjong with
Say it again.
Real Mahjong.
Real.
Like
Thank you.
True. RealMahjongg.
Yes.
.com.
And they tell you what to do.
You get a month free to try it. And then it's $5.95 a month.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Talia, that would be great.
I would love to, because I've been playing the computer because it's quick, and I've joined other groups that were random people, and I'd be waiting and waiting, and it was like, I didn't know who they were, and I thought I might as well just play the computer. But I'd love to, because it would give it more meaning.
Right, and we could Zoom and talk to one another. If you,
that's fabulous.
You have a Zoom